Welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week here at MMA Junkie, we take a spin through the biggest stories in MMA. I'm your host, Gorgeous George, and with me, as always, some of the sharpest MMA minds in the biz. Joining me this week, of course, it's Goes from MMA Junkie Radio here in the fight capital of the world, Las Vegas. And then we got the West Coaster, Simon Samano. He's chilling out there in LA. Danny's holding down the East Coast, Danny Segura. The 305 to be more exact. So both coasts are on point. And of course, Cold Coffee holding it down on the ones and twos. What a squad. Let's get started. UFC middleweight champion Israel Adesanya. He recently uttered the words, F that belt, heading into the UFC 281 title fight versus Alex Pereira. The champ said, quote, just beating him, end quote, is what matters. We know the history between these two, with Pereira having beaten Adesanya twice in the sport of kickboxing, and one of those two wins was a KO finish. But when you hear this coming from the champion, fellas, does he have the right mentality going into fight week? Could he be psyching himself out, making it a little bit too personal? I want to know. Simon, you're getting the party started this week.
All right, let's go. I think Adesanya is right to humble himself heading into this fight. You know, he's got those two losses in Glory Kickboxing to Pereira. One of them was a decision, one of them was a knockout, and he's felt his power and he's been knocked out before. He's the champ, but he really should be going into this with a humble mentality. George, I'm going to make an analogy here, but for anybody who watches the NFL, and it pains me to say this, knows that the San Francisco 49ers own the LA Rams in the regular season. They've beaten them 8 times in a row, and last year it was 6 times in a row going into that NFC Championship game. But who won that NFC title game? Hurts me to say it, but it was the Rams. They won the fight. They won the game that mattered. And so this right here, this is the fight that matters between Pereira and Adesanya. This is the one. Those two other fights in Glory, they're nice. They're good wins. One's a knockout, but Adesanya has the opportunity to erase all of that away with winning this fight on Saturday. And let me put the emphasis on just winning. This is the mentality Adesanya should be taking into this fight, because these last few fights that he's had, he's really talked up a big game. Like, he's going to do this, he's going to do that. It's been an overhype, under-deliver situation with Adesanya. I think going into this fight, just focus on winning. And if you get that finish, and if you get the ultimate revenge, and you get that knockout, that's great. But just go in there knowing that you actually do have something to prove, that you want to beat this guy on Saturday night.
I love it. Domination. It has to happen for Israel to continue taking those steps up to the comparisons that lead to Anderson Silva or being pound for pound number one. I get it. Full show. How about you guys? What are your thoughts?
I actually love his mindset, guys. I think this is what brings out that killer instinct that we know Israel Adesanya has. He can pull it out. It's what pushes you in the morning to get that extra work in, right? But here's the thing, man. I mean, it's got to be rough, right? Like, it's one of the most embarrassing things that's ever happened to him, and he has to relive it over and over all week. It's going to keep coming out. People are going to be asking that same question. He's got to turn that negative into a positive, and I think he's starting to do that. But at the same time, you can't forget who you are. I know Pereira is going to be dangling that carrot over your head, Israel Adesanya, this whole week, but you can't take the bait, because at the end of the day, he's the one chasing you. He wants what you want, and this is a different sport. And you have to remember that. If you're Israel Adesanya, you have to fight the way Israel Adesanya fights. He can't get lured into traps by Alex Pereira. That's not the mindset. So, yes, I love that he's bringing out that killer mindset, but at the same time, remember where you're at. You're going to be in a cage, not in a ring. You're going to be wearing smaller gloves, not bigger gloves. Fight the way you fight. Fight your fight. Don't let this guy pull you into that. If I'm Alex Pereira, though, I am dangling that carrot as much as possible. I'm handing him pillows at weigh-ins. I'm trying to get in this guy's head because sometimes it seems like things can rattle Israel Adesanya.
Yeah, a pillow at a weigh-in. That'd be a nice one. Here's an additional quote before we get to Danny. He said, if there's ever a fight I have to win, it's this one. So strong emphasis on the task at hand for Izzy. Danny, chime in.
Yeah, I love this, by the way, and there's 2 reasons why, but I'd like to put a little disclaimer before I go into it. Let's remember he said in previous fights, like, yo, I'm going to kill this guy. I'm going to knock this guy out. And we've seen some maybe boring performances, dominant, but fairly boring performances, right? So he might have this killer instinct, but who knows? Maybe he goes out there and points fight like we've seen in some other fights against Alex Pereira. Again, it's a very dangerous foe. So we'll see. So again, I don't want to get too excited and get ahead of myself, but just from the preliminary talk, I got to say I do like it because of 2 reasons. Number one, is this is a legacy fight. This isn't just one more title fight. If he loses to Alex Pereira, I think his stock will drop tremendously, because it's going to be like, hey, this fighter that was champion, he really wasn't the best all along at 185. There was this other mean Brazilian dude out there that was actually better than him. He proved it in the kickboxing world, and now he proved it in the MMA world. So huge fight for Israel Adesanya here. I mean, it's probably the biggest fight of his career so far, I would say, or at least like top 2 or top 3. And the second reason why I like this is precisely from what I mentioned at the beginning. A lot of the criticism has not been him not being dominant, him not being good, him not being a good personality outside of the cage. No, a lot of the criticism, and really the only criticism that we've had in recent times of Adesanya, is his in-cage performances. Yes, he looks good. Yes, he's dominant, but he's not very exciting. He almost seems content at just winning a decision. And I know it takes 2 to tango. A lot of his opponents are also content just going a decision with the champion and not getting finished. But that criticism is still exists. And look, he's headlining a pay-per-view event, a massive one at MSG. So it's a big moment. This change of mentality, I see it as he's going to go out there and put on a performance and make a statement. It might come via finish, or it might just come by a decision of somebody just actually putting a whooping on Pereira. So we'll see what happens. But in the preliminary talk, I love it. But I also don't want to get too excited. Maybe it just, pre-fight talk.
You could just say boring. I mean, Adesanya's been boring the last couple fights,
Yeah.
I mean, he has, but it's a testament to his dominance. It's a testament to his skill set. It's a testament to his fight IQ. Like that's what it is. It's like boring is almost a compliment when it comes to Adesanya, just because the problem is that he's put himself in position to have more critics, right? By all this talk of, I'm going to knock this person, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then he just doesn't deliver. That's been the biggest issue. And the only knock against Adesanya is that his talk hasn't matched what he's done in the cage.
Simon, he'll say that he's been surgical, not boring. You're not seeing what
surgical. That's the euphemism for boring, is surgical. Here's another thing to think about going into this fight. If Pereira pulls this off, if Pereira wins on Saturday night, Adesanya's looking at fighting him a 4th time. There will be an immediate rematch, and there will be an immediate rematch. And if Adesanya was able to go ahead and make the adjustments and win that 4th fight, we're probably getting a trilogy. He's looking at the prospect. If he loses on Saturday, Adesanya's looking at the prospects of potentially fighting this guy a total of 5 times.
Yeah. That's very possible.
You win the fight on Saturday, it's over with. You win on Saturday, it's over with. You move on. Yeah. You move on from him.
I would go out there and say this. Even if he does say lose and then comes back, wins it again, gets a trilogy and wins again and kind of puts that to rest, that still brings down his stock just slightly. Again, he's still winning. He's still the champ. But this sort of, I mean, let's keep in mind, he's undefeated at 185 pounds. It would be his very first loss in the weight class. So I think a lot is on the line here. Like,
really, earlier you said tremendously. Now you're saying slightly, though. Which one is it? Because earlier you said if he takes a loss, that would be a tremendous fall for Israel Adesanya. Now you're saying his stock would drop slightly.
I'm saying if he comes back, wins a rematch and then a trilogy fight, and then puts that sort of rivalry to the bed and wins the rivalry, I think even though he comes out up top, it will still just that one loss, even if it's a fluke, even if it's just a 10-second knockout, whatever it may be. I think it still hurts his stock slightly. So I think a loss here, again, is very consequential.
Just win Saturday, and you move on from the nightmare of Alex Pereira.
But what is a win, though? That's the thing. That's what we have to figure out with this guy. Because if a judge tells you won the fight, does that feel the same as what Alex Pereira did to Israel Adesanya? Right? He knocked him out. I think for Israel Adesanya to feel victorious, he's got to do the same to him. He might tell you otherwise. If he wins a surgical performance on Saturday, if he wins that, he may tell you otherwise, that he feels like it's even. But I think deep down inside, he won't feel like it's even.
Here's another thing, if I may chime in. Israel Adesanya seemed to have gotten taken over by Alex Volkanovski. Alex Volkanovski's had an incredible 2022. He's only got 4 title defenses. Izzy has 5, although he'll tell you it's 6, right? But the reason is because he's been surgical or boring, whatever you want to call it, whereas Alex has been dominating. And I think that's what Izzy needs to get back, is he needs to dominate and say, I got more title defenses. I've been doing it longer than my teammate. But with all due respect, I'm pound for pound number 1. And one other thing, shout out to the talented Cold Coffee. I love that he put up the video there, including the highlights, including Yoel Romero. He played with fire, guys. That was a close decision that some scored for Yoel Romero.
I scored it for Romero.
Process,
I'll go out there and say it.
Yeah, in that process, he's taking risks as well by being surgical or taking it slow and counting on people to see the way he's expressing himself, because judges are just kind of going off their intuition of who got the best of who using the unified rules of MMA.
Yeah, it's compelling theater going into Saturday night.
Adesanya needs to go back to kicking ass, not just winning, and that's what Volkanovski is doing right now. He's kicking ass, he's whooping ass, he's handing out ass whoopings left and right. Adesanya, he's winning, but he's not doing that precisely.
Yeah. All right, that's a perfect pivot to the next couple of topics here. I wanted to ask you guys, did you catch that video floating around last week of the former UFC strawweight champ Zhang Weili lifting UFC heavyweight champion Francis Ngannou over her shoulder? Looked like she wanted to demonstrate a technique. Francis trying to slow her down a little bit. And as the champ explained on his Instagram page, and simultaneously I was thinking the same thing, he said, I don't want her to do it. I was scared of her hurting her back. He also currently lists himself at 293 pounds. So that is quite a feat. Now, reminder, Zhang Weili, she competes this Saturday in the co-main event at UFC 281 versus champion Carla Esparza. So putting that strength of feet aside, what do you think might have gone through the head of the Cookie Monster when eventually she saw that? And also what went through your guys' head? Goes?
Probably a couple things. One is probably like, don't do that. I still want to collect my paycheck. I want to be able to fight you. And the other part was like, holy crap, did she just do that? Because Francis Ngannou, George, you've been around him. That is a guy where when he fist bumps you, dude, your entire hand disappears. This is an enormous person, okay? For her to be able to lift him up like that is pretty crazy. But it's also crazy that she even attempted it, because that's just not how you really lift weight. That's so awkward. She could have really hurt herself. So I think the UFC was probably going crazy. I think Carla probably went crazy for a little bit. But look, man, we're still going to see a fight, hopefully. And I don't know. Carla Esparza is not getting too much respect here, and I sort of understand it. Look, there are no doubts that she's going to get – I think she can get her down. I think she can get Zhang Weili down. The problem is, what do you do then, right? If you don't finish her, that means you got to take her down 5 other times to win this fight. You saw Zhang Weili. You see how explosive she is, how much pressure she puts on her opponents. That is a really tall task, man. This is a difficult fight for the Cookie Monster. It's something that I know she wants. A lot of people don't give her that respect. If I'm Zhang Weili, though, I actually might do the opposite. I might chill a little bit in round 1. Because remember, Carla Esparza came off a snoozer of a fight that a lot of people still make fun of to this day, her and Rose Namajunas. I'm curious to see what happens with Carla Esparza, if she could stand there and just keep moving around, if she's going to feel pressure from that last fight in this fight. I think it's going to be a lot better fight than people are giving credit for, but I think it's going to be Zhang Weili's night.
All right. Danny, what were your thoughts on the video, what she did? If you'll recall, we had a fight lost because somebody misstepped on the Fox set years ago, tore their ACL, one Tony Ferguson. So it's not like we're crazy here and being a little too cautious.
Yeah, my first thought was like, Zhang Weili's strong as shit, right? Like, there's no other way to getting around that video without thinking that. And yeah, I took also in mind the potential risk of injury there, but also I just feel like she's in such good shape at this point. She wouldn't attempt that just if she knew she couldn't do it. She probably deadlifts like a ridiculous amount of weight, well over 300 pounds. I don't know. I mean, she's stupid strong, right? And we'll see. I mean, I think this definitely hypes things up because a lot of people are thinking that Carla Esparza is going to get run over here. So there's just kind of feeds onto that. Like, look, she can lift Francis Ngannou. Imagine what she can do to Carla Esparza, who's not even a big 115er. She's probably, more suited for atom weight. So it definitely like blows up more of the legend of Zhang Weili. But I would say this, for Carla Esparza, you want this, right? Her title reign, a lot of people consider illegitimate because, she fought Rose Namajunas in a fight that was extremely boring. You just got to call it how you see it. And also, it was very hard to judge, right? Because there was little action. So it could have easily gone to Rose Namajunas as well. So a lot of people think maybe she shouldn't even be the champion. A lot of people don't see her as the best 115-pound female fighter right now, even though she has that UFC belt. So I think the better, the bigger, the scarier the legend of Zhang Weili grows, the better for her. Because if she does beat her, I mean, you cannot say that anymore. I mean, we're looking at the best 115-pound fighter. We're looking at the champion of the division. I mean, it doesn't matter what you say at that point. It'll be a fact. I mean, Zhang Weili is a complete killer. She's an absolute savage. So if you beat her, you're clearly number one. So this is what you want from a challenger.
Mm-hmm. Simon, what was going through your head, man? It's fight week. We can't lose a fight. We don't want to lose a fight over that.
No, I mean, I wasn't worried about that. It's just an impressive feat of strength from Zhang Weili. But, heading into this fight, it's like, think about all the talk that was happening after Esparza beat Namajunas back in May. I mean, immediately on social media, how many people did you see already digging her grave for this fight against Zhang Weili? Like, they were already digging her grave. She's got no match. She's got no chance. And then this video appears and you're like, holy shit, she's got super strength. She's going to be able to take her down or manhandle her. It's just crazy. Like the Carla Esparza situation is crazy. Like this fight is a fight that I thought would be put on a different pay-per-view, not on the Madison Square Garden, New York pay-per-view. Why would you put this on the Madison Square Garden, New York pay-per-view? It's the biggest showcase for Zhang Weili. That's what this is for. The UFC wants Zhang Weili. They definitely want Zhang Weili. It's good for business. It's good for business in China if Zhang Weili is the champion. And that they're expecting that result, and they would like to see that result happen. So like this is another instance of Carla Esparza being disrespected. And it's just wild. It's just wild that we continue to disrespect her and like count her out. I mean, she won the title against Joanna. She won the title against Rose, and then she immediately lost it to Joanna. She went 3-3 in those fights after she won the title the first time against Rose Namajunas back in 2014. When she was 3-3, who thought Carla Esparza would make another run to the title? Did you really ever think she would make another run? But then she runs off wins against Virna Jandiroba, Alexa Grasso, Michelle Watterson, Mahina Rodriguez, Yan Xiaonan, and then she beats Rose again in a rematch that nobody gave her a chance to win. Yeah, it was a snoozer, but she still won that fight. And so, like, here's the thing. I'm saying all this stuff because I'm not supposed to be a fan, but I'm a fan of Carla Esparza. But, man, I can't see her winning on Saturday. I just can't see it happening.
Eight years between title reigns as well. That's one hell of a comeback story. Add to that an Invicta title. Add to that the tough championship that she won. She is a tough champ. Very impressive. And yeah, she's getting disrespected. In fact, guys, minus 400 for Zhang Weili. Probably even higher than that after the video.
Probably. It's crazy. Yeah.
280 for Carla Esparza. So we know Simon's feelings here. He doesn't think the champ can retain. And I think Go's kind of made his clear. How about you, Danny?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously favoring Zhang Weili, but I'm always
hesitant. How would she retain? Answer this question. How would she retain? What is the way? What is the path to victory?
Win 3 rounds,
wrestle her ass off. Wrestle her ass off. She is durable. Carla Esparza is durable as hell.
Yeah. And Zhang Weili's not that impressive off her back.
Sorry?
And Zhang Weili's not that impressive once she gets taken down. It's not
exactly. Yeah. I mean, she's improved a lot in the wrestling, and she's, as we saw, I mean, just extremely strong physically. So we know in the wrestling department, the strength is a huge factor. But if she's able to like do a type of wrestling that doesn't really combat strength versus strength, doesn't really lock up in much 50 positions, turn some corners as we see here, uses single legs, uses techniques that kind of go around what, the strength of Zhang Weili. I think we could see maybe her retaining or putting up a competitive fight enough that maybe it goes to the judges and, it gets tough to judge and she can get her hand raised. I mean, it's definitely not out of the realm of possibilities. I think the biggest thing is watching out for the strikes, trying to absorb the least amount of damage and just wrestle her ass off the entire time. We do know that she's got stupid cardio, and Zhang Weili is also a very good athlete, but if she takes her into the deep waters and just turns it into a wrestling match, I think it can get kind of interesting.
And that's a good point, Danny, because that's a good point. You know why? Because we see this video. What's happening with the phone there?
That's how she wins, is for fans to have their phones out with their lights on. That's the only way it can be done.
Yeah, that's where that was going, dude. What I was going to say though is to Danny's point about the wrestling and the path to victory. We see a video like Zhang Weili lifting up Francis Ngannou, and we marvel at it. Oh my God, what a feat of strength. And it is a feat of strength. Wrestling is about angles. It's about technique. It's about leverage. It's not always about strength. Of course, Zhang Weili is stronger than Carla Esparza, But if Carla has the right technique, she has the right leverage, she has the right angles, she will be able to take her down and she will be able to hold her down. And it's a good point. It's a really good point. So I would say, in order for Carla to win, yeah, she's got to have she's got to be on her best wrestling game coming into this fight.
She's got
can't stand with her. She can't stand with her.
She's got the experience. She's gone 5 rounds. And then there's one other word too, guys. What did GSP, what made his wrestling almost impeccable? Timing. He would let the others be so aggressive that he would just time it. And along with what Simon and Danny said, the leverage, the technique. Kenny, shout out again to you, man. That B-roll there. We must have seen 3 or 4 different types of takedowns. She had an inside trip. She had a toss. She had a conventional double leg, and I think a couple of those were well-timed. Carla's savvy. So I think she's being dismissed a little bit too much. And when this thing blows up a little bit more here on Fight Week, once it hits the car washes and all that stuff, I'm telling you, it's going to be so that we're almost painting a picture like she has no chance on Saturday. But I think the fight's going to be a lot closer than it seems.
You might be convincing me to change my pick. We'll see.
I don't know, guys. You guys forget Carla Esparza has been doing this for a long time. She's been doing this for a very long time, and I don't know that timing is still there, guys.
Yeah, plus 280 is what Carla comes in at. We have to move on, though. All right. So, I still haven't heard the official announcement from the UFC about an Islam Makhachev, Alexander Volkanovski lightweight title fight in February in Perth, Australia. And Beneil Dariush says he's not going to beg for a title shot. He would prefer to stay busy, almost making it easier for the UFC to book him versus another contender in the meantime. So, as we talk about the featured bout at UFC 281, and with Chucky Olives out of the way, could the winner of Dustin Poirier and Michael Chandler leapfrog the 2 names I mentioned up above and anyone else that might be considered as a title challenger at lightweight? If so, lay out for me what it would take to pull off this caper. And if not, what big fight awaits the winner? Danny, get the party started.
I see it as unlikely, but definitely possible. I think for the most part, Alexander Volkanovski has a title shot at 155 pounds unlocked. I mean, we saw Dana White saying after the fight in Abu Dhabi, saying that, yeah, it makes sense that probably that's what's next. And we know that Dana White really steered away from making fights on Fight Night. He always says, look, ask me after Tuesday once I get together with the matchmakers, this and that. I never, even if it seems so obvious, never ever make fights on Fight Night. So for him just even saying that, yeah, it makes sense, that's probably what's going to happen next, even though he didn't 100% commit, that's a huge tell. So plus he was the official backup that weighed in for that fight between Charles Oliveira and Islam Makhachev. I mean, something terrible has to happen for Volkanovski in order for him not to get the title shot. I mean, I'm talking about an injury. I'm talking about, I don't even want to get into what other possible scenarios because I don't want to jinx anyone here. But something outside of fighting has to happen in order for him to not get the title shot at 155 pounds. So I think the winner here most likely is going to end up fighting Beneil Dariush for that #1 contender spot. I don't agree that the winner here deserves to fight for the title, but I do believe the winner here is deserving of a #1 contender spot. And I mean, what other guy are you going to plug in? Beneil Dariush is 100% deserving of one. I mean, heck, he's deserving of the title shot right now, in my opinion, more than Volkanovski. But we know how the UFC operates, and obviously you can't deny that for the history, for the size of the fight, Volkanovski versus Makhachev is going to be probably bigger than, it's definitely going to be bigger than Islam Makhachev versus Beneil Dariush. So I think the winner here takes on Beneil Dariush. I think that's what's at stake here.
Simon, what are your thoughts here? Both of these guys, Poirier and Chandler, are savvy. They dress up really nice on Fight Week. They know how to handle themselves on the mic. And, of course, they got tons of skin on the wall that can help sell a huge fight, probably even more than some of the others. What do you think?
I think a win here should be – it shouldn't – I don't think either guy should get a title shot with a win here, to be honest. But the thing is – and it's for different reasons, though. If it's Dustin Poirier – and let's just say he goes out there and Poirier, let's just say he finishes Chandler. That may be enough to get him a title shot. I mean, you're not going to put him unless you put him back against Charles Oliveira, but I can't see that happening. I agree with Danny. First things first, I think Beneil Dariush deserves a title shot first and foremost, but we know that's not going to happen. My problem with Dustin Poirier winning and potentially getting a title shot is we already saw a version of that fight. We already saw Dustin Poirier against against Khabib, and this is Dustin Poirier against Islam Makhachev, and we saw how that fight went. We saw how that fight goes. So that's not necessarily a fight that I would be too excited about. So the Dustin Poirier not getting a title fight quite yet, kind of for me, stems from that reasoning. Like, that's a fight that we've already seen. Chandler, on the other hand, I'm just going to go ahead and say this. Like, Michael Chandler should not be in the title conversation right now. I mean, Michael Chandler is 2-2 since he joined the UFC. And we're talking about him over Beneil Dariush, who's on a 7-fight winning streak. What's going on here? Like, Michael Chandler's 2-2 with losses to Justin Gaethje and Charles Oliveira, two guys that we would say were elite when he fought them. And his wins are against Dan Hooker, who was on the tail end of his contendership at lightweight, and Tony Ferguson, who, I'm sorry, at this point is washed. And by the way, Ferguson gave him a tough time in that first round. So for me, I think Chandler has more work to do, even if he wins this fight against Dustin Poirier. That would be one where I would think he'd have to get a win back, either against Gaethje or either against Oliveira, before we think about putting him in there against Makhachev. That's the way I see it.
Well, Simon, though, but he is pretty popular. He does seem to be one
that
of the guys.
Part I get. No, I get it. I get it.
And if you're going to bring up that Ferguson was doing well against Chandler, Chandler would probably be the first to say, hey, I kind of 10-8'd Chucky Olives before he got me. So I competed there. And I also wobbled Justin Gaethje before he finally
fight of the year.
So,
it was fight of the year. Absolutely. I'll give you that, but they're two L's at the end of the day. They're both L's, and both wins are not the biggest. Like, they're not the highest quality of wins at lightweight. So it just, I'm speaking about Chandler in this sense, more so from the idea that Beneil Dariush isn't even being talked about, getting this title shot. He's already out of the running. He's pulled himself out of the running, basically, because he sees the writing on the wall and he's got no leverage to do anything. So he's like, all right, just give me whoever so I can, prove it again. And that's a bummer. Like, that, to me, that's a bummer. It's about Dariush more than anything for me, because I think he deserves it before both guys that are fighting on Saturday night.
Simon, I 100% get your point, and if you do it on a merit standpoint, 100% agree, and I feel that point. But realistically speaking, I would say out of all the guys out there, out of Poirier, Chandler, and Beneil Dariush, the guy that's most likely to skip Alexander Volkanovski and get the next title shot at 155 pounds, I got to say it's Michael Chandler. Again, fight of the year, knockout of the year against Tony Ferguson. And then on top of that, for years, a lot of people were kind of daydreaming of a potential fight between Khabib Nurmagomedov and Michael Chandler, because he does have that wrestling. So Islam Makhachev being sort of the second coming of Khabib, I can see him going out there, picking up a sick win, whether it's a crazy fight or a crazy finish, cutting a good promo, plus he's in the good graces of the UFC. Maybe the timing is not perfect for Volkanovski. Who knows? I think there's maybe like a slight possibility that he may find himself in a title shot.
I don't disagree with you. I just disagree with that happening. That's all, and even if he wins on Saturday, he'd be 3-2 in the division since joining. Super exciting, super tough. It's got nothing to do with knocking Michael Chandler in that sense. Obviously, he's been incredible in that sense, but 3-2 in the division. You got Beneil Dariush right there, 7-0, 7 wins in a row. I just, to me, that would be the guy. But yeah, this is not a merit sport.
Well,
Carry on. Chandler gets the knockout. Then he does a promo. Remember, Joe Rogan said that was one of the greatest, if not the greatest promos he's ever heard. Throw in about 4 or 5 backflips. I'm telling you, man, everyone's buzzing usually when he does get the job done, and it's exciting.
The whole reason we're even talking about this is because the UFC does weird stuff. Okay, Dana White does weird stuff that doesn't make sense. We were saying Beneil Dariush could have had the last title shot, so to even skip him going forward here would be insane. Dana White would have to grow a mustache now so that he could start twirling it like a villain in a cartoon, right? It makes 0 sense. But could it happen? I think so. You never know with this guy. Dana White does these types of things, but there is a recipe to all this, all right? And George kind of mentioned it at first. It's make weight. You got to do that. You got to win the fight, devastating fashion, like Tony Ferguson, something pretty nasty. You got to pull another amazing promo out of your ass. But, we keep seeing all this film on Michael Chandler. And what does he always have around his back? The red, white, and blue. You got to push that angle as well. All right. You got to push that America versus Russia, whatever. As much as you got to pull every card out of your pocket, man, to make this happen, because Beneil Dariush definitely does deserve it. And here's the thing. We don't even really have clarity on this, all right? He just went and met with President Dana White here in Vegas. And he had a big Kool-Aid smile on his face, guys, when he took that picture. That was good news. Whether that's a new contract or he's being told you're next, whatever it is, he seemed pretty happy about it. You have Islam Makhachev and you have Alexander Volkanovski and Dana White. All three say that fight should happen, yet nothing's happened. Why is that? So all of this, as insane as it sounds, could actually happen. It shouldn't, though.
Hey, what if Volk wins and then he has to go defend featherweight and the whole 55 division is on hold? Can you imagine? That's what I hate about it. If he wins it, please just relinquish one of the two. You did it.
I would throw this scenario. This is what I want to see in my heart. Have Dariush, deservingly so, fight Makhachev for the title, and then have Volkanovski fight the winner of Poirier Chandler in a mega fight, non-title fight, number one contender spot.
He wants the belt. I think if he's going to move up, he wants the belt.
I know. Yeah. But just saying, trying to be fair.
We can dream, George. Let us dream, man.
All right. We can revisit. I'm excited about 281. Some of these tie in with 281, but let's give a little homage to what took place this past Saturday here. We had UFC Fight Night 214 here in Las Vegas. 9 of the 11 fights were finishes. Hats off to them, man. They came to compete. But I want to know from you guys, who had the biggest impact, be it through their performance, maybe their pre and post-fight communications, the call-outs, the press conferences, things like that. Social media, was it a buzzing? Simon, it's on you, sir. Who did you think had the biggest impact from this past Saturday?
Biggest impact, I'm going to go with Amanda Lemos making the biggest impact on Saturday night in the main event. It's an obvious answer, but I think it is the answer. And if for one reason and one reason only, as our guy Mike Bond pointed out in his takeaways column, the past 5.5 years, the title fights at strawweight have all included either Carla Esparza, Zhang Weili, Jessica Andrade, Rose Namajunas, or Joanna Jędrzejczyk. 5.5 years, and those are just a revolving door of fights between those five. Amanda Lemos, at least, she announces her arrival. She's new blood. She's fresh blood in the division, at the top of the division. And to me, like, I'm never going to knock the fact that we can have new matchups, Lemos, say what you will about the finish on Saturday night and Jason Herzog's decision to stop it while Marina Rodriguez was still standing. But she still looked good, and she still got the W, and she's a new face. So I'm going to go with Amanda Lemos in this one.
That's a good one. Yeah. And I love the fact that she said, put me in as the backup. I'll fly.
Make your case, right? Like, well, how many fighters in her position would be like, oh, whatever the UFC wants, she goes out there afterwards in the press conference. She says, yeah, I think I deserve it. Absolutely. Make your case. Say you deserve it. You do.
Yeah. Put me up at one of them fancy New York hotels and I'm in. All right. Next up here is Goes. What did you think?
Man, I thought all three of them did something fairly interesting. But if we're talking about impact, something that's going to stick around, I think Lemesh's impact is going to, carry on until the next fight. Same thing with Grant Dawson. But Neil Magny's is going to carry on for quite a while, guys, because he broke a pretty spectacular record. There's not anybody really near him that can challenge him for this. Maybe Matt Brown, but you never know he's at the end of his career. So for him to get 20 wins in the welterweight division, when you think about all the killers that have been in that division for years through, it's pretty damn amazing, man. He's going to be able to carry that. But on top of that, he had every right to walk around with a big head and strut his shoulders. But I thought he came off really well. When people were comparing him with the things that GSP's done, he kind of cooled everybody down. I just thought from beginning to end, winning that many fights, accomplishing that, saying the things that he said afterwards, man, I think you got to be really, really proud if you're Neil Magny, and I think that's going to carry impact for a while.
Yeah, just to
let me ask you a question though, Ghost. Can I ask you a question? What do you think?
I know what it is. It's going to sting me, isn't it?
No. What do you think about wins and not winning? Not winning the big one. Magny, like these records that involve wins in the UFC, they're impressive, but they kind of come with not an asterisk, but I mean, like, no one's saying Neil Magny's greater than GSP. We're never going to say that.
Right.
So doesn't it matter where you win? Like Jim Miller has a wins, record as well, right? But we don't really. He's not the greatest in his division. What do we think about wins and what they mean in longevity in MMA?
I think it is important. Now, I thought you were going to hit me with Hall of Fame and all that because a lot of people like to associate these records with Hall of Fame.
I don't
think
even
it's
go there.
deserving
I
of
can't
that.
even go there.
Yeah, it's not deserving of anything like that. But it is something to really hang your hat on. It's something to be really proud of because there's a lot of fighters that don't even have 20 fights in the UFC, let alone wins, And he's got pretty decent ones. It's not like he just went through 20 cupcakes, right? Like he's had some tough fights. But it's something that he's going to be able to hold on. And apparently it seems like he's going to be able to hold on to it for quite a while, man. I don't know who the next guy that can possibly catch him will be, but I know there are at least 6 or 7 wins behind.
Yeah. One thing's for sure. Don't call him a gatekeeper. How about you, Danny?
I don't know.
I'm going to go with Grant Dawson, but I agree with you guys. Like Lemush looked amazing. Neil Magny, I mean, you got to praise the guy for just having longevity. I believe he made his UFC debut in 2013. So pretty much a decade fighting in the UFC. And he's been a top 15 guy more or less the entire time. Like that's pretty damn impressive, man. So yeah, props to all those two. But I would say for me it was Grant Dawson. This is the new blood at 155 pounds. We're talking about, Gamrot, Sarukian, Fisiv, and these people coming up. Well, you got to put Dawson on that list as well. He might not be as further along as those guys yet, but man, he's definitely on his way. And I know he missed weight for this fight, but again, it was a short notice bout. And I also didn't see that Marco Madsen lost because there was a size difference. There's fights where you see not the better fighter win, but the bigger fighter. And this wasn't the case. We saw Dawson beat Madsen when it came down into the striking and the grappling and the wrestling, really everywhere. This is a fighter that's very, very complete. He's clearly hitting new levels to his game. He's just 29 years old, unbeaten in his UFC record. He has 8 fights, 7 wins, 1 draw. He's clearly looking for a step up by calling Tony Ferguson. I didn't like the call out. I think Ferguson should be retired into the Legends divisions and shouldn't be fed to hungry young lions such as this guy. But I do like the spirit in the sense that, hey, give me a big name. I need to be part of this division as a staple. I'm no longer this up and coming. I'm here. So I love Grant Dawson. I thought his performance was phenomenal, and he's a player at 155 pounds, no doubt.
He kept it real. He said, I can't move up unless there's a name. Otherwise, I'm kind of stuck here outside of the top 10 land, whatever you want to call that. So I think that's why he threw out Ferguson. But yeah, maybe even reach higher than that and just go for it. Look what Sean O'Malley just did. He took out Peter Young. He said, all right, I'm way down here. Give me that guy. And it's looking good for him. Good
Did you have one, George?
Well, I agreed with Dawson. I thought what I liked was, starting off the week with not making weight, losing 30% of your show, but then being able to come back and take out someone who hasn't lost. And then your strength is wrestling. And even though it's, more of the freestyle, folk style versus, I guess, Greco-Roman stand-up, still, you're standing across from a silver medalist, an Olympian who hasn't lost. I think that's a big win for him. And I think he even got some of that satisfaction from talking to DC. What did you think about my wrestling? Because he put it on display and again, suffocated Mark Madsen. So I thought he was just ticking boxes all along the way. I probably agree with Danny. Maybe Tony's probably not the guy, but I think he was probably singling someone out who just doesn't have a fight available to him right now and is a name. He knows he's guaranteed he'll be on a pay-per-view or something like that.
Can I put Danny on the spot?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Danny mentioned Dawson in the same category, in the same class as Gamrot and Sarukian.
No, he's not as further along, but I'm saying in the new blood.
He's there in the new blood. Of those new blood guys, you pick
battle.
one. Who's going to be a UFC champion? Who's going to be UFC lightweight champion of those 4 guys? New blood.
Sarukian, Gamrot, Dawson.
I'm going to go with Sarukian, man.
Fisiv and Fisiv.
Fisiv.
I'm going to go with
Fisiv
Sarukian
as well.
We saw him already fight Islam Makhachev I believe on short notice. That was like one of the early Fight Island shows, if I'm not mistaken. That was his UFC debut. And dude, he gave him hell. Go watch that fight. It was a back and forth, beautiful Sambo war. Both of them were throwing each other, reversing each other. A lot of people talk about Sarukian versus Gamrot as like, oh, this is probably the best display of grappling. Dude, go back and watch the Islam Makhachev fight. That was just beautiful stuff. And it's a guy with, not that much experience. And I believe, again, the fight was on short notice. So you give him a full camp, plus he's racking up those wins, those minutes in the octagon. Dude, I think Sarukian is is well on his way to
26 years
champion,
old.
even
Plenty of room
though
to
I know
grow,
he
too.
lost to Gamrot.
Yeah.
I like Gamrot, even though he's coming off a loss. He used to be kind of known as someone that would tire as the fight went, but man, he was strong against Sarukian. And then I think he got a lot of valuable experience against Benny, who I think is outstanding. So even in that loss, his stock didn't drop. But man, those are 4 great fighters. And Dawson's pretty hard to stop as well, man. That guy's so committed to his offensive wrestling and his grappling. And I mean, he literally suffocates the life out of you. I just don't know about those 4th and 5th rounds. That's a whole other animal right there.
For sure.
All right,
The
good
new
stuff.
blood. Sounds like a wrestling match. The new blood at lightweight.
Another 5-round specialist we're going to talk about here in a different way. So former UFC champ Henry Cejudo had an interesting prediction. He's of the opinion that should Colby Covington square off against Khamzat Chimaev, he favors the smack-talking American. Quote, his threshold is his biggest gift. This is where he beats people. His tenacity. When you fight and you wrestle, that's when things actually get hard, and people are not accustomed to that. I mean, the threshold to Colby Covington. I have to give this dirtbag a 10, end quote. May want to make sure that quote's attributed to Henry, not me. Do you guys agree with Triple C, or is Boers the one that would bring the chaos? Goes, we're all ears. Go.
Look, Henry says a lot of things. Some of it is persona, and a lot of it's going to be off the wall. But in this case, when he's breaking down specifics in fights, you have to listen. This is arguably one of the greatest combat athletes to ever live. And in this case, I agree with him. I think he makes a lot of great points here. Colby Covington does not have a lot of weaknesses, guys. He can take down just about anyone. He's got cardio for days. He can take a shot. He gets inside of your head. And what's one thing we talk about Khamzat Chimaev? I mean, he's had just about as many fights outside of the cage as he has inside of the cage, right? So is Colby, to be fair, but he could probably get inside that guy's head with just one interview. So another thing is Colby doesn't have to fight 2 fights. Khamzat has to fight 2 fights. One is the actual fight and the other one is the weight cut. You better be 100% when you're fighting Colby Covington, because that dude does not stop coming forward. And if Khamzat's having trouble making weight, if he can't make the weight, if his body's even a little deteriorated from that, it's going to be a problem. So I like what Henry Cejudo is saying here in all his comments. But yeah, dude, right now, like early on, you gotta kind of look at how much of a toll has some of these losses to Colby Covington. What has it done to his body? He's not as active, but really, man, that wrestling just seems to always come out of him. The cardio, I think, is a big thing. So I would agree with Henry. I would kind of lean towards Colby Covington right now.
All right. And Danny, before you tell me which way you lean, let me tell you how the odds makers are leaning. Chimaev minus 175, Colby Covington plus 150. What do you think here?
I disagree, but I get where Henry Cejudo is coming from. I do think that Makhachev should be the favorite, as he is. Sorry, Chimaev should be the favorite, as he is, as you mentioned in the odds. I would say he should be a little closer to minus 200, but still in the 100s range. But yeah, I mean, this is a very, very competitive fight and might actually be the toughest fight he can find at 170 pounds styles wise. I mean, look, I'm all on board on the Chimaev hype train. I am, chucking Cole, over my shoulder. I think that, Chimaev is bound to be champion at 170 pounds. I think he's super, super good. I don't think he's overhyped at all. But I would say that Colby Covington might be his toughest test at 170 pounds, even more than Leon Edwards, even more than Kamaru Usman. I mean, you got a guy that's got stupid cardio, a very high volume of strikes, and he can wrestle his ass off. So he can somewhat answer some of the challenges that Chimaev presents as far as the wrestling department goes. I think where the difference will be is that Chimaev is far more stronger and just a bigger physical presence in that octagon. We've seen Colby Covington talk about a potential drop to 155 pounds. We know that he competed in college at 160. He's not one of the bigger 170 pounders. So I think ultimately that would make a difference in Chimaev winning the fight, in my opinion. But shit, yeah, I mean, Covington is as tough as it gets. I mean, that's a tough challenge for Chimaev, no doubt.
All right. How about you, Simon? Which way are you leaning? You feeling what Triple C's got to say?
Well, I am, but do you guys think that Khamzat Chimaev could come out against Colby Covington the way against Kevin Holland and just shoot on him right away? No. Do you think he could do that? Like, do you think that would be smart? No way, right? Because Hamza Chimaev had no intention of retaining a gas tank. He was gonna go for that fight. He was gonna go for the finish in the first round against Holland, and he got it. You come out and do that against Colby Covington. I don't think you're getting the finish like that right away. You can say what you want about Colby Covington, the dirtbag, but Colby Covington, the fighter, is freaking hell of a fighter, and he's got a hell of a cardio, a gas tank. His cardio can go on cardio for days, man. So, like, to me, that's the nail on the head. Go's already touched on it. It's about the fight at the scale. I mean, Colby's going to come in and make weight like a professional. I got no doubt about that because, he's done it. He's done it every time. I don't think he's had any issues. Has he had any issues at the scale before? Not that I can recall. So this is a guy who knows how to take care of his body like an athlete heading into fights. And Hamza Chimaev right now, there are serious question marks about how he takes care of his body going into a 170-pound fight. This would be a 171-pound fight. It couldn't make 171 against Kevin Holland. He missed by 7.5 pounds. So to me, that's the deciding factor there is like, what is he able to make the weight and how does he feel? Because Colby Covington, that dude just puts pressure. It's an onslaught of punches. He's in your face. And if he's not in your face, just, jabbing you, he's going to try to take you down. So to me, that's the biggest thing is the weight. And I do agree with Triple C. I think, dude, dare I say, I think Colby Covington should be the favorite heading into that fight.
Possibly. I mean, if
he's the guy with the most, he's got more experience, more big fight experience.
He's won 4 rounds from Usman in both of their title fights. He had a 2-2 going into round 5 in the first one, and then he came back strong in that second one. He's wobbled Usman, so his stand-up isn't just to be cast off to the side. Wrestling and cardio are the strengths, but the stand-up's not bad. And Chimaev, he did gut it out. I thought he was gassing, but he did gut it out in round 3 against Gilbert Burns, and that impressed me. But that's still a whole different pace, going with Colby Covington, and in rounds 4 and 5, those additional 10 minutes, that'd be something else. And Boers would know that, so that he couldn't come out like you said, Simon. Guns a blazing. He'd have to fight a different type of strategy.
Do you think they wouldn't give us a fight night 5-round main event with that one? That would be a pay-per-view main event. But do you think the UFC would make that 5 rounds or just 3 rounds? They make exceptions at times. I'd love to see it for 5 rounds.
Insist on 5, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say, hey, this is like a title elimination.
Colby would insist on 5.
I'm the gatekeeper to the champ. So, that's that's what I would insist if I'm the Covington camp.
I think it could be an ABC fight night, like main event, big stage. You want to boost Chimaev's star power as much as you can. I think that could be a main event of a fight night. Why not? 5 rounds.
If they have that in the works for like a January, like they've done on ABC before in the past, yeah, that would be good. I would love to see that fight at 5 rounds. That would be,
yeah, for sure.
That's the move. That's the move right there. 5 rounds.
Even if it was 3 rounds, we'd still get an extra 2 rounds at the press conference, at weigh-ins. Because, dude, there's no way those guys don't get into it backstage.
Oh yeah. I'll say this: we disagree here on. I go Chimaev, you guys go Colby Covington. But what are the odds this fight happens? I think that's the most intriguing
talked
thing.
About it enough, and when it's been brought up to Dana, he has not dismissed it. So I think it's very likely.
Yeah, you think Covington?
I think at some point Covington's gonna have to. He's gonna have to back up his talk. And that guy runs his mouth a lot. So this is where Colby the dirtbag comes into play here, right? Colby the fighter is a hell of a fighter. Colby the dirtbag likes to run his mouth, and he's definitely ran his mouth about Chimaev before. So if you're gonna do that, and they come knocking with Chimaev, which maybe they already have, it's been talked about. You got to accept it. You got to do it.
Closer to a title shot at
dude. That's the thing. If he beats
it by making the weight,
But you don't think that if Covington beats Chimaev, that wouldn't be a win that would earn him a title shot?
I think so. Yeah,
that would earn him a title shot.
That would Covington beats Chimaev, and Edwards beats Usman, then Covington will fight Edwards. I think he'll
100%, absolutely.
Masvidal has to have a win to cash in on the 3-piece and the soda, and then if Usman wins, then Covington. He's a little bit frozen out, but now by Chimaev beating Covington, I think he gets a chance.
But I almost feel like Colby would have a case. I almost feel like Colby would have a case just by beating Chimaev alone. He would have a case for a title shot just by beating him, just because of how high, dude. Chimaev's stock is way up here out of the screen. It's crazy. So if he were to beat him, I
don't know if he'd take that fight, to be honest. And it's a very winnable fight for him. Like I said, I think the odds are very competitive in my opinion. And shit.
You don't
You know,
think
a
who
lot of
would take
people
it?
would pick him to beat Chimaev, but I don't know if he takes it. I think if Dustin
He doesn't
Poirier
think Colby will
wins-
take it.
I think if
Oh,
Dustin Poirier wins this weekend against Michael Chandler, he'd rather go on Twitter and try to pick a fight with that guy than Chimaev, in my opinion.
maybe,
Okay.
but that doesn't get him closer to a title shot. That's the problem.
Yeah.
All right. We got to move on. Guys, as you know, the holidays are creeping up. I need some Christmas money. So what I need from you guys is a parlay. Do you guys happen to have a parlay for me based off of UFC 281, the typical odds that I sent over to you guys that I'm sure you guys already have on your favorites? Israel Adesanya minus 190, Alex Pereira plus 145, Zhang Weili minus 400, Carlos Esparza 280, Poirier minus 220, Chandler plus 170. Any of the others? Who's got a good parlay for me? Goes. I haven't heard from you in a while. How about you?
Dude, every parlay you got to include some kind of underdog, right? Mine's gonna be Michael Chandler. I understand that he's an underdog, but I think the odds are a little off there. So I'm gonna start off with him. Speed, level changes. I think he keeps Dustin off balance and wins with a big shot to end the night. So that's the first leg of my parlay. Zhang Weili, I know it's a high favorite, but I think she's gonna get the job there done. I think the cookie crumbles in this one, guys. Third one,
I see
Israel
what you did there.
Adesanya. Israel Adesanya, I believe he's got the right mindset. But I think he's tricking everyone. I don't think just because he wants this fight so bad that he's going to come out and be sloppy. I think he's going to be surgical. I know Pereira has the wins over him and all that. But look, man, if you beat Jordan in a 3-point shootout, doesn't mean you're going to beat him one-on-one. And that's where we're at right now. We're one-on-one in the cage where Izzy is champ. So I believe that'll be the third leg of the parlay. I'm going to sprinkle another one just for fun, George, so you can make some more money. Manchester United over Fulham. Sorry, Nate Scott. Please don't fire me. But that will be the fourth leg of this.
All right. Well, leaving out Man U, but I appreciate that. Your parlay pays 605, and usually $100 parlays, which is what we always revolve around 100. It could be 50, 25. You guys have to do the math, but 100 is what we talk about here in Vegas. Pays 605, and usually it pays 6-1. So I love it. Plus 270, minus 400, minus 190. You get a former champ, a champ, and then Michael Chandler, a former Bellator champ. So you're going to war with some good fighters.
It's the weirdest thing. They've already gave me the money. It must be really good. So
wow.
They just gave it to me.
Danny, how about you?
I gotta say, Goes, putting Man U on the line. That's a ballsy bet, man. I don't know if I would put money on Man U at this point in time. But if my parlay would be, I would go with Claudio Puelles plus 130 to beat Dan Hooker. That's my underdog. Gutierrez to beat Frankie Edgar. And look, I love Frankie Edgar. This is supposed to be his final fight, but didn't he had a hip surgery, if I'm not mistaken? And he's had some, bad knockout losses recently. I think Gutierrez is a solid pick for minus 220. So I would go Puelles, Gutierrez, Weili at minus 400, and Adesanya at minus 190. I think that's a solid parlay right there.
14 parlays usually pay 10-1, so 100 would pay 1,000. Danny, yours pays 538. I think it's because you have a lot of chalk, you have a lot of favorites. But either way, I'm digging it. All right, good stuff. Simon, how about you? What you got for us?
That's it. I'm going Gutierrez, Poirier, Esparza. Boom.
Ooh.
Carla Esparza. I'm going with the champ. I think everything we talked about earlier. I've been thinking about it. Wrestling, technique, strength. We marvel at strength. But man, Carla, wrestling, technique. Yeah, I think she can pull this off.
Simon, your parlay normally would pay 6-1, but because of Esparza's huge odds, your 100 pays 704.
That's what's up, and that's worth it. That's worth the risk.
A little bit more than goes. You got Gutierrez, you got Poirier, a former champ there, and then Esparza, a champion. So you're also going to war with some good fighters. All right, I like it. I think I have the opportunity to make some do the attack on Black Friday and Cyber Monday. Appreciate you guys for that. We're out of time, folks, but thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget, MMA Junkie's the place to be. Lock it down. This whole week, we got you covered for UFC 281. Outstanding coverage. We're sending cold coffee. We got some writers heading to New York. They'll be on site. And, of course,
Mike Bond and Nolan King.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we will be pushing it throughout the week. And don't forget, Goz and I will be hosting a UFC 281 watch-along on Saturday. Eric Nixick will be a guest of ours. He'll also be there as well with us. 8 Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. For that, go to MMA Junkie on Fight Night and hang out with us. All right, thanks to Danny, Goz, and Simon, as well as Cold Coffee. And thank you for chiming in and hanging out here with us. Folks, go to the comment section. I'll be in there throwing elbows with you guys, talking about these topics. I can't wait. It's fight week. It's amazing. We'll see you next week here on Spinning Back Clique.